On my 70th birthday, I reserved a table at the restaurant where my late wife and I celebrated every milestone. I wanted to feel close to her one last time. But when I arrived, they refused me entry. Your daughter called, sir. She warned us you're unwell, confused, that you might make a scene. Standing alone in the rain, I questioned everything I thought I knew, until a single father stepped forward, and what he said to me changed everything. Thank you so much for being here with me today. It truly means more than you know. Before the story continues, take a moment to let me know where you're watching from, your city or country. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Also, a quick note, this story contains some fictional elements added for educational and storytelling purposes. Any similarity to real people or settings is coincidental, but the message I'm sharing with you is meant to be meaningful and helpful. On my 70th birthday, I stood outside the Lexington Room with rain soaking through my wool coat, watching strangers celebrate inside the restaurant where my wife and I had marked every milestone for 40 years. The windows glowed amber in the October dusk. Through the foggy glass, I could see families laughing over wine couples leaning close across candlelit tables, a little boy blowing out birthday candles while his grandparents applauded. The scene looked like a Norman Rockwell painting, warm, perfect, everything a family should be. I wasn't part of that painting anymore. I'd made the reservation 3 weeks ago, right after my last doctor's appointment. Doctor Harrison had given me a clean bill of health, sharp mind, strong heart, better than most 50-year-olds, he'd said, with that encouraging smile doctors reserve for elderly patients. I'd walked out of his office feeling something I hadn't felt in 3 years, hopeful. Maybe 70 wasn't the end. Maybe there was still time to rebuild what I'd lost when Marianne died. So I'd called the Lexington Room and reserved table 14, our table tucked in the corner, by the stone fireplace, where Marianne always insisted we sit. It's the warmest spot in the restaurant. She used to say, though, I think she just liked watching the fire while we ate. Now, standing in the rain with my collar turned up against the cold, I reached into my jacket and pulled out my wallet. Tucked behind my driver's license was a photograph Marianne and me on our wedding day, 1976. She wore a simple white dress with lace sleeves. I wore a suit I'd borrowed from my college roommate. We were standing in front of Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, both of us grinning like we'd won the lottery. In a way, we had 48 years, I whispered to the photograph. Happy anniversary, sweetheart. The rain came down harder. I returned the photo to my wallet, squared my shoulders, and walked to the restaurant's entrance. The heavy oak door swung open, and warmth rushed out to meet me, the smell of garlic and rosemary, the murmur of conversation, the clink of silverware on china. For a moment, I felt Marianne beside me, her hand slipping into mine, the way it always did when we walked into nice restaurants. Then I saw Gregory Stevens, the maitre d', approaching with an expression that made my stomach drop. So, Mr. Pemberton. His voice was careful, the way people talk to children or the very old. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. I glanced past him at table 14. A young couple sat there sharing a plate of oysters. I have a reservation. 7:30, Philip Pemberton. Gregory clasped his hands in front of him, a gesture I recognized from decades of business negotiations, the posture of someone about to deliver bad news. Sir, your daughter called this morning. She explained the situation. Situation. My heart started hammering. What situation? She said you've been experiencing some confusion lately. Memory issues. His eyes flicked to Melissa, the hostess who stood behind the podium watching us. She was very concerned. She said you might not remember making or canceling reservations. The words hit me like a slap. I don't have memory issues. I made this reservation 3 weeks ago, and I certainly didn't cancel it. I understand this must be frustrating. Frustrating. My voice rose and several diners turned to look. I lowered it, trying to maintain the dignity that seemed to be slipping through my fingers like sand. I'm not confused. I'm here for dinner on my birthday, at the restaurant where my wife and I celebrated our 40th anniversary, where we celebrated every anniversary. Melissa stepped forward, her young face full of practiced sympathy. Mr. Pemberton, your daughter sounded very worried about you. She said you'd been having episodes, that you might become agitated if things didn't go as you expected. Episodes. I repeated the word, tasting its bitterness. I don't have episodes. Gregory touched my elbow gently, the way you'd guide someone who might fall. Perhaps it would be best if you went home, sir. Called your daughter. I'm sure she'd want to know you're safe. Safe. As if I were a child who'd wandered away from his parents. I pulled my arm free. I'd like to speak with the manager. I am the manager, Mr. Pemberton. Gregory's voice remained infuriatingly calm. And I'm sorry, but given the circumstances, I can't seat you tonight. It wouldn't be appropriate. Inappropriate. I was being deemed inappropriate at the restaurant where I'd proposed to my wife 50 years ago. I stood there for a long moment, feeling the eyes of everyone in the entrance watching me. An old man making a scene. An old man who couldn't remember if he'd canceled his own reservation. An old man whose daughter had to call ahead and warn the staff about his confusion. I see, I said finally. Then I apologize for the inconvenience. I turned and walked back into the rain. The door closed behind me with a soft click, shutting me out of the warmth and light. I stood on the sidewalk, rain drumming on my shoulders, and pulled out my phone. My hands shook as I scrolled to Allison's number. The call went straight to voicemail. This is Allison Pemberton. Leave a message. It's Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm at the Lexington room. Or I was. They said you called them. Said I'm confused. Allison, I don't understand what's happening. But I need you to call me back. Please. I hung up and stared at the phone, willing it to ring. It didn't. Through the restaurant windows, I watched the little boy from earlier hug his grandfather. The old man's face lit up with joy, and something in my chest cracked. That should have been me tonight. That should have been my family, my celebration, my moment of connection. Instead, I was standing in the rain, wondering if I really was losing my mind. Had I canceled the reservation and forgotten? Was Allison right to be worried? The doctor had said I was fine, but doctors missed things. Maybe I'd been hiding the symptoms, even from myself. I thought about the past 3 years since Marianne died. The empty house, the quiet dinners alone, the conversations I had with her photograph before bed. Maybe that wasn't normal. Maybe Allison had noticed something I couldn't see. Maybe I really was confused. The rain soaked through my coat, and I started to shiver. I should go home, take a hot shower, try to remember if I'd done or said anything lately that would make my daughter think I needed intervention. I was about to walk to my car when I heard a voice behind me. Sir, are you all right? The hand on my shoulder was steady and warm. I turned to find a man in his mid-30s, dark hair, wet from rain leather jacket, dripping eyes, holding genuine concern. Beside him stood a little girl in a yellow raincoat, dotted with cartoon bees, holding a small umbrella. She looked up at me with Marianne's eyes, that particular shade of hazel that changed with the light. I'm fine, I said automatically. The man didn't move his hand. I saw what happened in there. That wasn't right. He gestured toward the restaurant. My daughter and I have a table inside. We'd be honored if you'd join us. I stiffened. That's very kind, but I couldn't impose. It's your birthday, the little girl said suddenly. Daddy heard that man say so, and nobody should be alone on their birthday. That's a rule. My throat tightened. It's your birthday, too. She shook her head, rain flying from her hood. No, silly. It's your birthday. I make the rules in our house. Something in her father's wry smile broke through my resistance. Or maybe it was the way she looked at me, as if whether I came to dinner mattered more than anything. All right, I heard myself say. If you're sure. We're sure, he said. Gregory Stevens's face when he saw us was a masterpiece of barely concealed shock. His professional mask slipped for just a second before he nodded at my companion. "Mr. Warner, your table is ready," so this stranger was a regular. That explained Gregory's restraint. We followed a waitress Willa according to her name tag to a corner booth by the fireplace. The warmth thawed my frozen hands as I slid into the leather seat. The girl bounced in beside me while her father took the opposite side. "See," she said, beaming. "Much better than standing in the rain." I couldn't argue. "I'm Jacob Warner," the man said, extending his hand across the table. "This is my daughter Clara. And you are—" "Philip Pemberton." His grip was firm, self-sufficient. I recognized it because I had the same handshake, the kind you develop when you've had to be strong for too long. Clara had pulled out crayons and was already drawing on her placemat. "Do you have grandkids, Mr. Philip?" The question hit me like a punch. No, I don't." "That's sad," she said matter-of-factly. "Grandpas are important." "Do you fish, Clara?" Jacob said gently. "It's all right," I interrupted. "I used to fish. With my wife. Before she—" I stopped. Clara looked up. Her crayon paused. "Did she go to heaven?" I nodded. "Yes, 3 years ago." I'm sorry," she said, and the simple sincerity made my eyes sting. "Heaven's nice, though. That's where my mama is. Daddy says she's watching over us." I glanced at Jacob, saw the tightness around his eyes. "Clara's mother left when Clara was 2 weeks old," he explained quietly. "We haven't heard from her since. 7 years. He'd been raising this bright, compassionate child alone for 7 years. "That must be difficult," I said. "We manage." His tone made it clear he didn't want to dwell on it. "What brings you to the Lexington room tonight?" I looked down at my wedding ring. "My wife and I used to come here for every anniversary. 40 years worth of celebrations at table 14. I gestured toward where the young couple sat. "I thought being here would make me feel closer to her. And instead they turned you away." Jacob said, his jaw tightening. We ordered pasta for Clara, steak for Jacob, salmon for me. As the food came and conversation flowed, I found my appetite returning. Jacob told me about his work as a software developer working remotely so he could be home with Clara. Clara chattered about second grade, her teacher Mrs. Morrison, her best friend Sophie, who had a hamster named Cheerio. She had Marianne's laugh, bright and uninhibited, the kind that made everyone smile. And she had dark hair, almost black, that fell in waves around her face. Just like number 1. I was imagining things. Grief made you see connections that weren't there. But then Clara smiled at something Jacob said, and I saw it again, that particular tilt of her head, the way her nose crinkled the dimple in her left cheek, but not her right. Allison used to smile exactly like that. "Mr. Philip." Clara's voice pulled me back. "I made something for you." She pushed her placemat across the table. On it, drawn in crayon, was a stick figure man and a stick figure girl holding hands. Above them, in careful letters, "Happy Birthday, Grandpa Philip." My vision blurred. "Clara, this is the best gift anyone's given me in a very long time." "You can keep it," she said proudly. As the meal ended and Willa brought the check, which Jacob insisted on paying, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years, connected. These strangers had reminded me that kindness still existed. Jacob pulled a business card from his wallet. "I mean what I said. If you need anything, and I mean anything, please call." I took the card, Jacob Warner Software Development, followed by a phone number. Portland, Oregon. "Thank you," I said. "Both of you. You've made a difficult night bearable." Clara hugged me fierce and quick. "I hope you have lots more birthdays, Grandpa Philip." I watched them walk away, Jacob's hand on Clara's shoulder. Heads bent together as they laughed. The picture of a complete family, even with a missing piece. And as they disappeared into the rain, I couldn't shake the feeling that Clara's smile reminded me of someone. Not just anyone, but someone I'd lost long ago. Someone who used to smile exactly like that before the world made her forget how. Dawn found me at my kitchen table with Clara's drawing spread before me and coffee growing cold in my hands. I'd given up on sleep around 4 when the questions became louder than the silence. I climbed to my study and pulled the photo albums from the top shelf, the ones I'd hidden after Marianne died. The one labeled Allison Childhood felt heavy in my hands. On the third page, Allison's 7th birthday party. Yellow dress dotted with sunflowers, chocolate cake in her hands, dark hair falling in waves, and that smile dimple in her left cheek, but not her right nose, crinkling head tilted just so. Clara's smile. Exactly. I turned pages with trembling fingers. 6 years old, 8, 9, all showed that same face, those same features I'd seen last night, in a little girl wearing a bee-covered raincoat. The resemblance wasn't similar. It was identical. Another photograph, Allison at 7, sitting on my shoulders at a 4th of July parade, completely trusting I'd never let her fall. When had we lost that? When had my daughter stopped looking at me with trust? I knew the answer. The day Marianne collapsed in the garden. Massive stroke, sudden, mercifully quick. But nothing merciful about the hole it left. Marianne had been the glue holding our family together. Without her, Allison and I became strangers speaking different languages. Allison moved out 6 months after the funeral. We had dinner once a month, stiff affairs, discussing business and weather and everything except what mattered. I'd told myself she needed space to grieve. But what if I'd been wrong? My phone buzzed. Jacob's text. Hope you're feeling better this morning. Clara wanted me to make sure you got home safely. I typed back, I'm fine. Thank you again. His response, anytime. Clara's already planning your next birthday party. Despite everything, I smiled. Then I pulled up Allison's contact and hit call. Straight to voicemail. Again. It's Dad, I said. We need to talk. Call me back. The doorbell rang before I could say more. Raymond Foster stood on my porch holding a casserole dish. Morning, Phil. Martha's lasagna. We settled at the kitchen table with coffee. Raymond talked about the Seahawks until he said something that made me freeze. And Allison stopped by yesterday, looking for you. I set down my cup carefully. She was here, around 3, said she'd been trying to call. He studied me. She seemed worried, asked if I'd noticed anything off about you lately. Off, to her word. Wanted to know if you'd been forgetful, if you'd said or done anything unusual. Raymond paused. I got the impression she was hoping I'd say something different. The coffee turned to acid. What did you tell her? The truth that you seem sharp as always. His eyes narrowed. Phil, what's going on? If someone wanted to make it look like I was incompetent, what would they need? Jesus. Raymond leaned back. Medical records. Testimony from people close to you. Documentation of confusion, memory loss. Poor judgment. He fixed me with a hard look. Your own daughter. Maybe I'm paranoid. Are you? I didn't answer. The restaurant incident, the questions to neighbors, the careful construction of a narrative about my declining mental state, it all fit too perfectly. After Raymond left, I pulled out Jacob's business card. Portland, Oregon. Clara's mother left 7 years ago. 7 years ago was 2017. The same year Allison took that sabbatical from Pemberton Holdings. 8 months of finding herself. She'd come back different, harder, colder, more focused on business. What if she hadn't been traveling? What if she'd been in Portland? I opened my laptop and searched Portland, Oregon mother abandons baby 2017. The third result? A human interest story from the Oregonian, March 2017. Single father raises newborn after mother's disappearance. The article was short. a young software developer named Jacob Warner, whose girlfriend left 2 weeks after giving birth. The girlfriend's name, Elena Warner. Though the reporter noted Warner might not have been her real last name. Elena, not Allison, but the timeline matched. February 2017, when Allison would have been in Portland. The article said Elena claimed to be a 22-year-old college student, though Jacob suspected she was older. Allison was 30 in 2017. I sat back, heart hammering. The photo album still lay open on the table, 7-year-old Allison grinning with that dimpled smile. I looked from the photograph to Jacob's business card to the newspaper article on my screen. The resemblance was undeniable. The timeline matched perfectly, and the woman who'd abandoned Jacob and Clara was exactly the age Allison would have been in exactly the city where Allison had found herself. Elena Warner, Allison Margaret Pemberton. Even the initials were almost the same. I thought about Allison's coldness these past 3 years, her sudden interest in my health, my memory, my confusion, the canceled reservation at the Lexington room, Raymond's revelation that she'd been asking neighbors about my mental state. She wasn't just stealing from me or trying to gain control of my assets. She was trying to bury a secret. A 7-year-old secret with dark hair and a dimpled smile who called strangers Grandpa without hesitation. My hands shook as I closed the laptop. I needed more than suspicions and circumstantial evidence. I needed proof. I needed to know exactly what Allison had been doing, what she was planning, how deep this deception went. And I needed to know if Jacob had any idea who Elena really was. But first I needed to see what else my daughter might have left behind. What other evidence she'd planted or stolen. What other pieces of this puzzle were hidden in my own home. I looked at the clock, 11:47 a.m. The whole morning had vanished while I'd been lost in photographs and newspaper archives and terrible realizations. I stood up my knees protesting and looked around my study at the filing cabinets full of decades of documents, at the safe hidden behind Marianne's favorite painting, at the security camera mounted discreetly in the corner. If Allison had been building a case against me, there would be evidence. Medical records I'd never seen. Forged documents. Things missing that should be here. The timeline matched. The resemblance was undeniable. And if I was right about what I suspected, then everything I thought I knew about my daughter was a lie. Suspicion was one thing. Proof was another. I spent the rest of Saturday trying to convince myself I was wrong, that the coincidences meant nothing. But by 2 a.m, lying awake in the dark, I knew I couldn't wait until daylight. I had to know what else Allison had been hiding. I went downstairs to my study, the house silent except for the creak of floorboards. If Allison had been building a case to have me declared incompetent, there would be evidence. And if she'd been careful enough to cancel my restaurant reservation and question my neighbors, she'd left a trail. I moved to the wall safe hidden behind a painting of the Columbia River Gorge, Marianne's favorite. My hands shook as I spun the combination. Inside were the documents I'd organized for years. Property deeds, stock certificates, insurance policies, bank statements. The statements should have been stacked neatly, one for each month. Instead, the folder was thin. I spread them across my desk. January, February, then a gap. June, July, August. September was too recent. March, April, and May were missing. 3 months gone. And those were the months when I'd started feeling foggy, when I'd begun doubting my own memory. I called the bank's 24-hour service line. After security questions, the representative returned. Mr. Pemberton, there are 2 authorized users, yourself, and Allison Pemberton added 6 months ago with full privileges. My stomach dropped. I didn't authorize that. Our records show you came into the branch. Your signature is on file. I hadn't been to the bank in over a year. Not since Marianne died. Any unusual withdrawals, I asked. There have been several transfers to another institution. Approximately $85,000 over 4 months. $85,000. My money taken while I trusted her. I ended the call and sat in the dark. Breathing slowly, then went to the master bathroom. The medicine cabinet held the usual bottles, blood pressure pills, vitamins, allergy medication. But pushed to the back was one I didn't recognize. Lorazepam, 2 milligrams. Take 1 tablet as needed for anxiety. The prescription was in my name, filled 2 months ago at a pharmacy I'd never visited. Prescribing physician Dr. Brady Thornton. The bottle was nearly empty. I had never taken a single pill. I'd never seen it before. Then I remembered. 2 months ago, Allison had started bringing dinner twice a week. "You shouldn't eat alone, Dad," she'd said. Thoughtful meals, careful portions, and after every dinner I'd felt exhausted, barely able to climb the stairs. I'd blamed age and grief, but what if it hadn't been natural? I went to Marianne's dressing room and opened the antique jewelry box from her grandmother. Inside were the pieces she cherished: pearls, a garnet ring, the diamond earrings from our anniversary. The velvet compartment where the Victorian diamond brooch belonged was empty. That brooch was worth at least $50,000. I knew it had been there 3 months ago. I was certain. My hands shook as I returned to the study and opened the home security system. The cameras stored footage for 90 days. I scrolled through the nights. 6 weeks ago, 11:22 p.m. The footage jumped to 11:47. 25 minutes missing. 5 weeks ago, 6:43 p.m., 8 minutes gone. 3 weeks ago, 2:17 a.m., 15 minutes erased. Someone had been in my house deleting evidence. And I knew who. I stared at the screen, sick with clarity. My daughter, the child I raised, the woman I trusted, had been stealing from me, drugging me, and constructing a story of my mental decline. But why go this far? If she wanted money, I would have given it. If she wanted the company, we could have planned it. Unless it wasn't just about money. Unless it was about stopping me from asking questions. From discovering what she'd done 7 years ago in Portland. From finding out about Clara. My gaze fell to the wastebasket. On top was a document I didn't remember throwing away. Psychiatric evaluation confidential. Patient Philip James Pemberton, age 70. Evaluating physician Brady Thornton, M.D. It diagnosed early-stage dementia and recommended immediate guardianship. I searched the Oregon Medical Board. No results. I called hospitals in Portland. No Dr. Brady Thornton had ever existed. The evaluation was a forgery. Sitting there, I finally understood Allison's plan. She wasn't just stealing money. She was building a legal case to have me declared incompetent, to take control of everything I owned, to put me somewhere I couldn't interfere. And Clara was the reason. Sweet Clara, who'd called me Grandpa Philip, who'd drawn me that picture. She was the secret Allison needed buried. Proof of a past. She'd erased a child. She'd abandoned a lie she'd lived for 7 years. If I uncovered the truth, if I connected Elena to Allison, everything would collapse. She needed me silenced, controlled, declared unfit before I could expose it all. My daughter was trying to destroy me, and at last I understood why. The realization settled slowly, like ice in my chest. Every doubt I'd brushed aside, every moment I'd laughed at myself for forgetting, had been carefully engineered. Allison had layered deception on deception, trusting I would question myself before I ever questioned her. Grief made me vulnerable. Loneliness made me trusting. She had used both. What frightened me most wasn't the money or the jewelry. It was how close she'd come to succeeding. Another month and the paperwork would have been filed, my voice dismissed as confusion. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being robbed of it. And now that I knew the truth, I also knew survival depended on patience, evidence, and choosing the right moment to act. Carefully. By Sunday morning, I'd made my decision. I couldn't do this alone. Whatever Allison was planning, whatever she'd done 7 years ago, Jacob deserved to know the truth. And I needed to know if my suspicions were right. At 9 o'clock, I pulled out the business card he'd given me at the restaurant and dialed before I could second-guess myself. He answered on the third ring. "Hello, Jacob, it's Philip Pemberton. From the other night." A pause. "Mr. Pemberton, is everything all right?" "No," I said, and heard how rough my voice sounded. "No, it's not. I need to ask you something about Clara's mother. The silence on the other end stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. Then, can we meet in person? Yes, please. There's a coffee shop downtown. Riverside Coffee on 3rd Street. 10:30. I'll be there. I arrived 15 minutes early, but Jacob was already waiting at a corner booth, hands wrapped around a mug he wasn't drinking from. He looked like he hadn't slept either, dark circles under his eyes, jaw tight with tension. He stood when he saw me. Mr. Pemberton. Philip, please! I slid into the seat across from him. A waitress came by. I ordered coffee I didn't want, just to have something to do with my hands. When she left, Jacob leaned forward. Clara's with a babysitter, he said quietly. I didn't want her hearing this conversation. Whatever this conversation is, I nodded. Smart. You said you wanted to ask about her mother. I took a breath. When did Elena leave? His jaw tightened. February 2017, 2 weeks after Clara was born. He said it like he'd said it 1,000 times before to doctors and social workers and curious strangers. Valentine's Day, actually. Clara was born on Valentine's Day. Elena left on the 28th, 2 weeks. She'd stayed with her newborn daughter for exactly 2 weeks, then vanished. Did she ever tell you her full name? Jacob's eyes narrowed. Elena Warner. At least that's what she said. But I always suspected Warner wasn't her real last name. She was cagey about her past. No family photos, no social media, always paid cash. I thought maybe she was running from something. An abusive ex, maybe, or family trouble. He paused. Why are you asking? Instead of answering, I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery. I'd spent an hour last night selecting the right pictures, recent ones of Allison at company events, clear shots of her face. I turned the phone toward Jacob. Do you recognize this woman? He looked down at the screen. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his face went completely white. The mug in his hands trembled, coffee sloshing over the rim onto the table. That's her, he whispered. That's Elena. The words hung in the air between us. The coffee shop noise, the hiss of the espresso machine, the chatter of other customers, the clink of cups faded to nothing. There was only Jacob's stricken face and the photograph of my daughter on the screen between us. That's my daughter, I said. Allison Pemberton. Jacob stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. Several people turned to look. He didn't seem to notice. His hands were shaking and his voice when he spoke was barely controlled. Your daughter. He wasn't asking. He was processing the pieces falling into place. Your daughter abandoned Clara. Your daughter is the woman who left my 2-week-old baby in the middle of the night with a goddamn note. I didn't know, I said quickly. I swear to God, Jacob, I had no idea until Friday night. When I saw Clara, when I saw her smile, I thought she looked familiar, but I couldn't. I stopped, tried to collect myself. Allison disappeared for 8 months in 2016 and 2017. She said she was traveling, finding herself. She came back different, colder, more focused on the business. I thought it was grief. My wife had died and Allison and I weren't handling it well. Jacob sat back down slowly, like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. She told me she was 22, a student at Portland Community College. We met at a coffee shop near campus. We dated for 6 months before... He gestured vaguely. Before Clara. She was 30, I said. In 2016, Allison was 30 years old. She lied about her age, her name, her whole life. Oh, Jesus Christ. Jacob put his head in his hands. I spent 7 years trying to find her. 7 years of Clara asking why her mama didn't love her. 7 years of wondering what I'd done wrong, what I could have said or done differently to make her stay. He looked up at me and his eyes were blazing. And she was just What playing house slumming it with the poor software developer before going back to her real life? I don't know what she was doing, I said honestly, but I'm going to find out. The waitress brought my coffee. Neither of us acknowledged her. When she left, Jacob spoke again, his voice quieter now, but no less intense. Clara is your granddaughter. Yes. And Allison, your daughter, has been pretending for 7 years that Clara doesn't exist. Yes. Why? It was the question I'd been asking myself all night. I don't know. But I think I stopped considering how much to tell him, then decided he deserved all of it. I think she's trying to make sure I never find out about Clara. She's been building a case to have me declared mentally incompetent. Forged medical documents, drugged my food, stolen from me. If she can get conservatorship, she controls everything: my money, my company, my ability to ask questions. Jacob stared at me. She's trying to have you declared incompetent, so you won't discover you have a granddaughter. I think so. Clara is evidence of a past Allison erased. If I started asking questions, if I connected the dots. I met his eyes. She needed to silence me first. We sat in silence, the weight of it crushing. Around us, the coffee shop continued its Sunday morning routine. People laughed, ordered pastries, made plans for the day. Normal life happening while our worlds crumbled. Finally, Jacob spoke. His voice was different now, harder, determined. If Clara is your granddaughter, then why is your daughter pretending she doesn't exist? It was the question that changed everything. Because now we both knew, whatever Allison's reasons for abandoning Clara, they were worth destroying her own father to keep hidden. We left the coffee shop separately, but an hour later, Jacob was at my front door. I need to see it, he said. The evidence. Everything you found. I led him to my study, where documents from last night were still spread across my desk. Jacob stood in the doorway, taking it in the open safe, scattered papers, the prescription bottle. Then he walked to the desk and started reading. I watched him examine the bank statements with missing months, the lorazepam bottle, the fake psychiatric evaluation. His jaw clenched tighter with each piece. Finally, he looked up. She's building a case to prove you're incompetent. I know. But why go to these lengths? He gestured at the evidence. If she wanted money, there are easier ways. That's what I can't figure out. If she just needed money, I would have given it to her. This is scorched earth. Jacob was quiet, thinking. Then, how much is Pemberton Holdings worth? Conservatively, $15 million, with real estate and investments closer to 20. He let out a low whistle. And if you were declared incompetent? With conservatorship, probably Allison. She's my only child, she already works there. Control the company, control your assets, control your ability to ask questions. He picked up the lorazepam bottle. And if you're drugged and confused, no one would believe you if you tried to fight it. And Clara. Clara is a loose end. His voice was flat fury underneath. Proof of Allison's past. If you discovered Clara exists, she needed you silenced first. We stood in silence, the weight settling over us. Ma, we need proof, I said finally. Real proof Clara is my granddaughter. Something that would hold up legally. DNA test. Can you get a sample from Clara hair from her brush? Yeah, I can do that. I'll find a private lab, somewhere discreet. And if the test confirms it, Jacob asked, then we figure out how to stop Allison and protect Clara. Jacob extended his hand. Partners. I took it. Partners. We stood there, two strangers, 48 hours ago, now bound by a little girl with dark hair and a woman who'd betrayed us both. Then Jacob cleared his throat. There's something else you should know. I waited. That night at the restaurant when I invited you to join us. He paused. That wasn't a coincidence. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? I've been looking for Elena for 7 years. About 3 months ago, I was doing another search. Found a business article about Pemberton Holdings. There was a photo of the leadership team. And you saw Allison. I saw Elena. The article said Allison Pemberton Viv P of Operations. So I started digging, found more photos, the company website. He gestured at me. Found you. And Elena had a photo in her Portland apartment. An old picture from a company picnic, you and a teenage girl. I didn't think much of it then, but when I saw you on the Pemberton Holdings website, I recognized you. I stared at him. You've been watching me for 3 months, trying to figure out how to approach you without sounding crazy. What was I supposed to say? Your daughter might be my missing ex-girlfriend. He laughed without humor. Then I saw the scene at the restaurant, saw them turn you away, and I thought maybe you needed to know the truth as much as I did. You orchestrated this. I took an opportunity. I didn't plan for your daughter to humiliate you. But when it happened, I saw a chance to help you and get the answers I've been searching for. I should have been angry. He'd manipulated me, used my pain as an opening, but all I felt was relief. Jacob had been looking for the truth as desperately as I was. You spent 7 years searching, I said, for Clara, so she'd know her mother didn't disappear for no reason. I looked at this man who'd become an ally in 48 hours, and realized Allison had miscalculated badly, because now there were 2 of us. We should get started on that DNA test, I said. Jacob nodded. I'll get Clara's sample tonight. I'll make the calls tomorrow. He headed for the door, then stopped. Philip, whatever happens next, Clara comes first. No matter what we find out, Clara's safety comes first. Agreed. After he left, I stood in my study looking at the evidence. The fake evaluation, the drugged medication, the stolen money. My daughter had orchestrated all of this to protect a secret she'd buried 7 years ago. But she'd made one mistake. She'd underestimated what a father and a man who'd spent 7 years loving the daughter she'd abandoned would do to protect a little girl with dark hair and a dimpled smile. The email arrived at 7:30 Tuesday morning, while I was sitting at my kitchen table with coffee I couldn't taste and toast I couldn't eat. Subject results. Patient ID number P. 202400928 from Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Pacific Northwest Genetics Laboratory. My hand shook as I clicked to open it. The PDF downloaded slowly, or maybe it just felt slow because every second was an eternity. Finally, the document filled my screen. Paternity test results. Confidential. Alleged. Grandfather Philip James Pemberton child. Clara Rose Warner. Date of collection. September 29th, 2024. Date of analysis. October 1st, 2024. I scrolled down, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Past the technical details about genetic markers and probability calculations, past the laboratory certification to the conclusion at the bottom of the page. Conclusion. Based on the genetic analysis of the submitted samples, the probability that Philip James Pemberton is the biological grandfather of Clara Rose Warner is 99.97%. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen. 99.97%. Not a possibility, not a likelihood, a certainty. Clara was my granddaughter. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I tried to blink them away, but they kept coming. I hadn't cried this much since Marianne's funeral, and now I couldn't seem to stop. My granddaughter, Marianne's granddaughter. The thought of Marianne hit me like a physical blow. I pushed away from the computer and walked to the living room, to the mantel where her photograph still sat in its silver frame. She was smiling at the camera, her hair caught by wind, standing in the garden she'd loved so much. "We have a granddaughter," I whispered to the photograph. "Her name is Clara." I remembered the conversations we'd had late at night when Allison was young. Marianne would talk about the future, about grandchildren, we'd spoil holidays, we'd host the family, we'd build together across generations. "I wish Allison would give us a grandchild someday," she'd said once, not long before she died. We'd been sitting on the porch watching the sunset. "I want to see what kind of mother she'll be," I want to teach her grandbaby all the things I taught her. You will? I'd promised, holding her hand. But that was 3 years ago. And now Marianne was gone. And the granddaughter she'd wished for had been alive this whole time, 7 years old, with dark hair and hazel eyes, and a smile that could light up a room. And I'd never known she existed. I pulled out my phone and called Jacob. He answered on the first ring. Did you get the results? His voice was tight. 99.97%. I said. Clara is my granddaughter. Silence. Then I heard him exhale a long, shaky breath that might have been a sob. Jesus, he whispered. I mean, we knew, but knowing for certain is different. Yeah, another pause. What do we do now? It was the same question I'd been asking myself for the past 10 minutes. We need to figure out why Allison abandoned Clara, and what she's planning now that might connect to it. Do you think she knows we're investigating? I don't know. But we need to be careful. If she realizes we've made the connection. I didn't finish the sentence. We both knew what Allison was capable of. Should we tell Clara? Jacob asked quietly. That you're her grandfather. The question made my chest ache. I wanted to say yes, wanted to tell that beautiful little girl that she had family, that she wasn't just the daughter of a mother who'd abandoned her. She was my granddaughter, Marianne's legacy, part of a family that would love her unconditionally. But I couldn't, not yet. She's 7 years old, I said. And she's already been through so much. If we tell her now, before we know what Allison's planning, before we can protect her. I stopped, swallowed hard. Let's keep her safe first. Then we'll figure out how to tell her the truth. You're right. Jacob's voice was rough. God, I hate that you're right, but you are. Did you send me the scan of Clara's birth certificate? Check your email. I sent it this morning. I pulled up my inbox on the computer. There it was, another PDF, this one, a copy of an Oregon State birth certificate. I opened it. Certificate of Live Birth, State of Oregon. Child's name, Clara Rose Warner. Date of birth, February 14th, 2017. Place of birth, Providence, Portland Medical Center, Portland, Oregon. Mother's name, Elena Margaret Warner. Mother's age, 22, stated. Father's name, Jacob Thomas Warner. Father's age, 28. I stared at the mother's name, Elena Margaret Warner. Margaret. Allison's full name was Allison Margaret Pemberton. The middle name had come from Marianne's mother, a family tradition she'd been so proud of, and Allison had given that name to the alias she'd used to seduce Jacob. As if even while lying about everything else, she couldn't quite erase who she really was. The middle name, I said to Jacob. Did you notice? Margaret. Yeah, I saw that. That's Allison's middle name. Allison Margaret Pemberton. So she kept part of her real identity. Jacob said slowly. Even while lying about everything else. Maybe she couldn't help it. Or maybe... I studied the birth certificate again. Maybe she wanted to leave a trail, some part of her that could be found if anyone looked hard enough. But you didn't look, until now. No. The word tasted bitter. I didn't. I printed out the birth certificate and the DNA results, then filed them carefully in a folder I labeled simply Clara. Evidence, but also something more, proof of a connection I should have known about 7 years ago. Valentine's Day. Clara had been born on Valentine's Day 2 weeks before Allison abandoned her. 2 weeks before she came back to Greenwood Hills and slipped back into her old life as if nothing had happened. What had those 2 weeks been like? Had Allison held her baby, fed her, looked at Clara's face and felt anything at all? Or had she already been planning her escape? I looked at Marianne's photograph again. I'll protect her, I promised. I'll make sure Clara knows she's loved, that she belongs to a family, even if that family was broken, even if the person who should have loved Clara most had thrown her away. My phone buzzed. A text from Jacob. Thank you. For wanting to be her grandfather. For not giving up. I typed back, she's family. That's all that matters. And it was true. Whatever Allison had done, whatever she was planning, Clara was innocent. She was 7 years old and loved dinosaurs, and drew pictures for strangers, and called people Grandpa with heartbreaking ease. She was my granddaughter, and I would protect her. I just didn't know yet what I'd have to protect her from. Jacob called me Wednesday night with an update. I'm going to Portland tomorrow, he said. I need to dig into Elena's past, see what I can find. Do you want me to come with you? No, he replied. Stay there. Keep an eye on things. If Allison suspects we're investigating, she might make a move. He hesitated. And this is something I need to do. For Clara, I understood, so I waited. Thursday evening, he called again. His voice was different this time, tight controlled like he was holding something back. I found things, he said. You need to hear this. He started at Portland Community College. The registrar's office was tucked behind the main administration hall, staffed by a middle-aged woman who barely looked up as she typed. I need information about a former student, Jacob said. Elena Warner, fall 2016. The registrar frowned at her screen. I'm not seeing any record of an Elena Warner enrolled that term. Are you certain of the name? Could you try Allison Pemberton? Her fingers paused, then resumed. Yes. Allison Pemberton. She audited 2 courses in fall 2016, Psychology 101 and Creative Writing. Not degree seeking. Something clicked for Jacob. Elena hadn't truly existed. She'd created a version of herself that couldn't be easily traced. Can I contact the instructors? The registrar hesitated, then nodded. Psychology was taught by Professor Linda Anderson. She's still here. Professor Anderson's office was cluttered with books and papers. She studied Jacob carefully when he mentioned Allison. I remember her, she said. Quiet, sat in the back, rarely spoke, but her written work was excellent. She paused. She dropped the class after midterms. That surprised me. Did she explain why? She said she was pregnant. Said she needed to focus on that. Professor Anderson tilted her head. You're the father, Jacob nodded. She told me she was 22, the professor said softly. I thought she was handling things well for someone so young. She was 30, Jacob said. Professor Anderson exhaled. Then I'm sorry. For you. And for the child. From the college, Jacob drove to the southeast Portland apartment where Elena had lived. The landlord, Mrs. Rodriguez, remembered her immediately. That girl, she said, shaking her head. She vanished in the middle of the night. Left most of her things behind. Owed me 2 months' rent. What happened to her belongings? I donated most of it. But I kept a few things in storage. She studied Jacob. You're the baby's father. Yes. She hurt you. Yes. Mrs. Rodriguez led him to a wire storage cage in the basement and pulled out a small box labeled 3B, Warner. Not much, she said. But there's this. She handed him a blue spiral notebook, a journal. I read it in my car, Jacob told me. I couldn't wait. It began in September 2016, when Allison arrived in Portland. She wrote about running away from me from the company, from expectations she couldn't meet. She wrote about suffocation, grief, and feeling invisible after my wife died. Then she wrote about meeting Jacob, about lying easily, pretending to be younger, free. She writes about getting pregnant in December, Jacob said. And everything changes. Changes how I asked. Fear, panic. She wants to run again but doesn't know where. He swallowed. I'm going to read you something. The entry was dated February 10th. 4 days before Clara was born. I can't do this. I'm not ready to be a mother. I thought a baby might give me purpose, make me real. But all I feel is terror. Dad would disown me if he knew. Not just about the baby, but the lies, the fake name, the running. I can't bear the disappointment. Better to never tell him. Better to let him believe I'm still his perfect daughter, even if it means abandoning this child. Even if it breaks Jacob's heart. I'm a coward. I know that. I just don't know how to be anything else. I couldn't speak. There's more, Jacob said. The final entry was dated February 27th. I have to go home. I have to fix this. And I have to make sure no one ever finds out about the baby. If Dad learns about Clara, he'll try to fix it. He'll get involved. Everyone will know what I did, that I ran away, that I abandoned my own child. I can't let that happen. So I'm burying this. Portland Elena Warner, the baby, none of it ever existed. And if Dad starts asking questions, I'll make sure he can't. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, I repeated. She decided then, Jacob said. Not the abandonment, but the silencing. I thought of the forged evaluations, the drugged meals, the missing money. She wrote the blueprint 7 years ago, I said, and she's been following it ever since. Yes, I looked at the DNA results on my desk, the birth certificate, the truth she'd tried to erase. Thank you, I said. I did it for Clara, Jacob replied. But we have to be careful. He didn't need to finish. My daughter had written her intentions down, and she was carrying them out, even if it meant destroying me. That night, after Jacob told me about the journal, I asked him to tell me everything. Not the abbreviated version, not the highlights, everything. How they met, how it happened, how she left. I need to understand, I said. Not just what she did, but how. I need to see it through your eyes. So he told me, and I listened. September 2016. Jacob had been sitting in a coffee shop near Portland Community College working on code for a freelance project, when a woman sat down at the table next to him. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, oversized sweater backpack that looked like it had seen better days. She'd smiled at him, shy, uncertain, and asked if he had a phone charger she could borrow. I'm Elena, she'd said when he handed it over. Thanks for this. I'm always forgetting mine. Jacob, and no problem. They'd started talking. She told him she was 22, a student at PCC trying to figure out what she wanted to do with her life. He told her about his work as a software developer, about moving to Portland 2 years ago for a fresh start. She'd laughed at his jokes, asked questions about his work, seemed genuinely interested in everything he said. She made me feel seen, Jacob told me, like I mattered. I'd been lonely for a long time, and suddenly here was this girl who wanted to know about my day, my thoughts, my dreams. They'd exchanged numbers, started meeting for coffee, then dinner, then more. October 2016. By October, Elena was spending most nights at Jacob's apartment. She'd show up with takeout stay to watch movies, fall asleep on his couch. It felt natural when she started leaving clothes there, when she stopped going back to her own place. So I asked her to move in officially, Jacob said. It seemed crazy, we'd only been dating a month, but it felt right. She'd said yes. A week later, he'd proposed. Nothing fancy, just him and her in his apartment, a ring he'd bought from a vintage shop downtown. I know it's fast, he'd said, but I love you. I want to build a life with you. She'd looked at the ring for a long moment. Then, I'm not ready. I'm sorry, Jacob. It's not you, it's just... I'm not ready. He'd been disappointed, but understanding. They were young. There was time. 2 weeks after that, she'd told him she was pregnant. November 2016. The pregnancy terrified her. Jacob could see it in her eyes every time she looked at the positive test, every time someone mentioned babies or asked when she was due. I can't tell my family, she'd said one night, curled up on the couch with her arms wrapped around her knees. Why not? They wouldn't understand. My father. She'd trailed off, shaking her head. He's very strict, very traditional. If he knew I was pregnant and unmarried, if he knew about you. What about me? You're not what he'd want for me. She'd said it apologetically, but the words had stung anyway. Jacob had promised he'd take care of her and the baby, that she didn't need her family's approval, that they'd be okay on their own. She'd nodded, but he could tell she didn't believe him. February 14th, 2017. Clara was born at Providence Portland Medical Center on Valentine's Day. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Dark hair, surprisingly alert eyes, a cry that filled the delivery room. The nurses had placed her on Elena's chest for skin-to-skin contact. Elena had looked down at her baby, with an expression Jacob couldn't read. Not love, not joy, not even curiosity. Just nothing. I thought it was shock, Jacob told me. Or exhaustion. Labor had been long. I told myself she'd bond with Clara once they got home, once she'd had time to rest and process. But the emptiness in Elena's eyes never went away. For 2 weeks, she went through the motions. Changed diapers, fed Clara bottles, held her when she cried. But there was no connection, no warmth. She moved like a robot, doing what needed to be done without any emotion behind it. Jacob had called the hospital worried about postpartum depression. They'd scheduled an appointment for the following week. Elena never made it to that appointment. February 28th, 2017. Jacob woke at 3 in the morning to Clara's crying. He'd reached across the bed, automatically expecting to find Elena to take turns soothing their daughter the way they'd been doing for 2 weeks. The bed was empty. He'd gotten up, gone to Clara's crib, picked up his screaming daughter. "Shh, baby, it's okay. Daddy's here." But where was Elena? He'd searched the apartment. Bathroom empty, kitchen empty, living room empty. Her backpack was gone, her jacket, her ID. On the kitchen counter, weighted down by a coffee mug, was a piece of notebook paper torn from a spiral binding. "I'm sorry. I can't do this. Take care of her. E." That was all. No explanation, no phone number, no forwarding address. Just a baby screaming in his arms, and a note that changed his life forever. I called her phone. Jacob said, his voice hollow with the memory. Over and over. It went straight to voicemail. I called hospitals, police shelters, filed a missing person report, but she'd left voluntarily, and she was an adult, so there wasn't much they could do. He'd sat on the floor of his apartment holding Clara and cried until he had nothing left. I sat across from Jacob in my living room, the story hanging between us like smoke. Outside it was dark. We'd been talking for hours. The coffee in my mug had gone cold. "You spent 7 years looking for her," I said. "For Clara," he corrected. "So she'd have answers. So when she got old enough to ask why her mother left, I could tell her something beyond 'I don't know.'" He looked at me. I wanted to understand, and I wanted Clara to know it wasn't her fault, that there was a reason, even if it was a terrible one. "And now you have your answer." "Yes." His smile was bitter. Elena Warner was Allison Pemberton. The woman I loved was a lie. She wasn't 22, she wasn't a student. She wasn't figuring out her life, she was running from it. And when reality caught up to her when she had a baby, she didn't want and couldn't explain. He gestured helplessly. She ran again. I thought about Allison at 7 years old, sitting on my shoulders at the 4th of July parade, about the journal entry where she wrote that she wasn't ready to be a mother, that I would disown her if I knew. She'd been so wrong. I would never have disowned her. I would have helped, supported, loved her through it. But she'd never given me the chance. "The answer we have," I said slowly, "isn't the one either of us wanted." "No." Jacob stood, picked up his jacket. "But it's the truth. And now we have to figure out what to do with it." After he left, I sat in the dark and thought about my daughter. About the choices she'd made, the lies she'd told the people she'd hurt. And I wondered if she'd been capable of abandoning her own newborn baby 7 years ago. What else was she capable of now? Before I walk you through that confrontation, before I tell you what I said to Allison and how she reacted, I need to know you're still here. Type truth in the comments if you want to see this showdown, because what happens next will leave you speechless. And just a heads up, this story includes some fictional elements for storytelling purposes. So if that's not your thing, feel free to stop here. But if you're ready for the confrontation you've been waiting for, let's go. 3 days after the DNA confirmation, I drove downtown to Pemberton Holdings. The building rose from glass and steel, 20 stories of success I had built from nothing over 4 decades. I remembered the pride I felt when we first moved into this space, convinced I was creating something that would last for generations. Now I wasn't sure of anything. The receptionist looked up as I entered the lobby, her professional smile faltering. "Mr. Pemberton, we weren't expecting you today. I'm here to see my daughter. Of course, I know where her office is." I walked past the desk before she could call ahead. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt endless. In the reflection of the polished doors, I barely recognized myself, older, harder, angrier than I'd been only a week ago. Allison's office sat at the end of the hall overlooking the city she loved. I didn't knock. I opened the door and stepped inside. She was seated at her computer reviewing reports. When she saw me, surprise flickered across her face, real, unguarded. "Dad." She stood. "What are you doing here?" I closed the door and locked it. The sound echoed. "I met someone interesting this week," I said calmly. "A man named Jacob Warner." I watched her face change. Color drained from her skin. And his daughter?" I continued. "Clara, 7 years old. Dark hair, hazel eyes, a dimple in her left cheek." I stopped in front of her desk. "Your eyes, your dimple, your daughter." Allison lowered herself into her chair, gripping the desk. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me anymore," I said. "I have DNA results. 99.97% probability. Clara Warner is my granddaughter. Your child." Silence filled the room. Outside the window, the city kept moving. "How did you find out?" she whispered. "Does it matter?" "Yes. You left traces," I said. "Even when you ran, you couldn't fully disappear. Elena Margaret Warner. You kept your middle name." Her jaw tightened. "Why did you come here? Why did you abandon your daughter?" "I was young. I made a mistake." "You were 30, I said sharply. "You made a choice." Her voice rose. "What was I supposed to do? Come home and admit I'd been living under a fake name, that I'd had a baby with someone I barely knew?" "You could have told me," I said quietly. "I would have helped." She laughed bitterly. You were too busy grieving Mom to notice me. That's not fair." "Fair." She slammed her hands on the desk. "Mom died and you disappeared. I lost both parents in one day. I was grieving, so was I." Her voice cracked. "I needed you. You weren't there. I wanted to deny it, but I couldn't." "I'm sorry," I said. "I should have been better. But this isn't about then. This is about what you did to Clara. And what you're doing to me now." Her expression closed. "I don't know what you mean. Why did you cancel my reservation at the Lexington room? Why did you tell them I was confused?" "Because you are," she said calmly. "You're 70. You forget things." "I'm not forgetting anything," I said. "You've been building a case, questioning neighbors, stealing statements, drugging my food. You're paranoid." I found the evaluation. I dropped the paper on her desk. "Dr. Brady Thornton doesn't exist. You forged this to declare me incompetent and silence me." She stared at the document, then looked up. Her eyes were cold. "You need to leave. We're not finished." "Yes, we are." She lifted her phone. "Leave now or I call security." I looked at my daughter and felt something break. "She's 7, I said softly. "Clara is 7. She draws pictures for strangers and calls them Grandpa because she's desperate for family. She doesn't know her mother abandoned her." "Get out," Allison said. I turned toward the door. My hand paused on the handle. "I thought I knew you," I said. I thought the girl who believed I could fix anything was still there. I shook my head. "But she's gone." She didn't respond. I left. As I walked down the hall, I heard her door close. Through the glass, I saw her pick up her phone, not to call security, but someone else. The look on her face as she spoke made my blood run cold. Whatever was coming next, I had just made it worse. I drove home from the office in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly, my thoughts replaying the confrontation again and again. The look in Allison's eyes when she told me to leave, the cold certainty that she wasn't finished, that she wouldn't back down. The moment I got home, I called Jacob. "How did it go?" he asked. "She didn't deny it," I said. My voice sounded empty. "Not really." She deflected, got angry, tried to turn it around. But she didn't deny abandoning Clara. She didn't deny any of it. Jacob was quiet for a beat. "What did she say when you confronted her about the evaluation?" "She told me to leave. And when I walked out, I saw her pick up her phone. She was calling someone. And the look on her face." I sank into the chair in my study. "She's going to retaliate. Then we need to move fast," Jacob said. "We need to understand exactly what she's doing. I want to know who Dr. Brady Thornton really is, how she found him, what role he's playing." "I'll make some calls," Jacob said. "Give me a couple of hours." I tried to wait. I made coffee. I didn't drink. I paced. I stared at the fake psychiatric evaluation still sitting on my desk exactly where I'd left it before everything exploded. 2 hours felt endless. When Jacob finally called, I answered immediately. "Tell me." "Brady Thornton isn't a licensed psychiatrist," Jacob said. "He's not licensed at all." I straightened. "Go on." "He was a medical student at Oregon Health and Science University. 2 years. Dropped out in 2018. No degree, no license, no certification." Papers rustled. After that, he rebranded himself as a wellness coach. More specifically, an elder care consultant. And that means, officially, helping families navigate aging concerns. Unofficially, helping adult children build cases for conservatorship. He produces assessments designed to make elderly parents appear incompetent. My stomach tightened. The evaluation. Yes, and he's done this before. How many times? 4 documented cases in the last 3 years. In all 4, his evaluations were used to pursue conservatorship. All 4 cases settled quietly. The parents gave up control rather than fight. 4 families. 4 lives dismantled. "So he's a scam artist," I said. "An elder abuser," Jacob corrected. "He found a profitable niche." "How did Allison find him?" "They met at a healthcare conference in Seattle in 2022. There's a photo. Networking event. He gave a presentation on cognitive decline in aging executives 2 years ago. She'd been planning this long before I suspected anything. "Send me the photo." "Already did." I opened my laptop. The image showed a group of professionals holding drinks. In the back, Allison stood beside a man with sandy hair and an easy smile. "Brady Thornton." They stood close. Familiar. "She sought him out," I said. "This wasn't random." "No," Jacob agreed. "She likely knew exactly what he did." "What about the other families?" "Most details are sealed." But all 4 adult children claimed dementia. All relied on Brady's evaluations. All parents surrendered. "Because fighting would mean questioning their own sanity," I said quietly. "It's psychological warfare." "Yes." I opened my trust account. The balance should have been $200,000. It was $150,000. I scrolled. 3 weeks ago, $50,000 transferred out. "She's already stealing," I said. "What?" "The trust fund. 50,000 gone, and another 10 last month. 15 before that." "Philip, we need the police," Jacob said. "This is fraud." "Not yet." "Why not?" "It's not enough," I said. "Right now, it looks like a family dispute. A concerned daughter, a wellness consultant, a worried aging father. But she'll say I'm paranoid, that I'm proving her point. She has witnesses. She's been preparing this for months. So what do you want to do?" I looked around my study, at the documents, at Marianne's photograph. "I want to know the full plan," I said. "Brady doesn't work for free. There's an end game. I want to know it before we move." Jacob was silent. "You're sure?" "No. But I know going early will help her. And if she escalates, She will, I said. After we hung up, I sat alone and thought about my daughter. About the girl who believed I could fix anything. About the woman who hired a con artist to destroy me. I thought about Brady Thornton and the families he'd helped dismantle. And I wondered how far Allison would go. 4 families had surrendered. 4 parents had lost everything rather than fight. But I wasn't going to surrender, even if it meant accepting that the daughter I raised was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Someone who abandoned her child and was now dismantling her father's life to keep that secret buried. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark and wondered where her line was. And I realized I didn't know. I no longer knew what my daughter was capable of. But I was about to find out. The Saturday morning light felt different, colder somehow, even though the sun was shining. I sat in my study with my phone in my hand, Jacob across from me, and the weight of what we'd discovered pressing down on both of us. I dialed Martin Hughes at 8:30. He answered on the second ring. "Philip and I," he said, his voice cautious. "It's early. What's wrong?" I told him everything, the evidence, the forgeries, the money, the plan. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. "Sokislim." Martin said, finally, his tone grave, "This is very serious. You need to contact law enforcement immediately." What charges are we talking about?" I asked. "Elder abuse, fraud, criminal conspiracy, identity theft, possibly more. This isn't something you can handle on your own. You need the FBI and local police involved. Today." I thanked him and hung up. Jacob met my eyes. "Greenwood Hills Police Station?" he asked. I nodded. "Let's go." The Greenwood Hills Police Station was a low brick building on the edge of town, surrounded by oak trees, and a parking lot that smelled faintly of asphalt and coffee. Jacob and I walked in together, and the officer at the front desk directed us to Detective William Cooper's office. Cooper was in his mid-50s with gray at his temples and the kind of calm, weathered face that came from decades of hearing terrible things. He gestured for us to sit. "A gentleman," he said. "What can I do for you?" I laid it all out. The fake psychiatric evaluation, the lorazepam prescribed by a non-existent doctor. The missing bank statements, the jewelry, the deleted security footage. I showed him the documents, the medication bottle, the timeline Jacob and I had pieced together. Cooper listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. "Mr. Pemberton," he said, "this falls under elder abuse statutes. It's also financial exploitation, and given the scope of what you're describing, I'm going to need to bring in the FBI." "And the FBI?" Jacob asked. Cooper nodded. "They have a dedicated unit for elder justice cases. This isn't just theft, it's systematic. Give me a moment." He picked up his phone and made a call. 20 minutes later, a man in a dark suit walked into the office. "Special Agent Spencer Torres," he said, shaking my hand. His grip was firm, his eyes sharp. "FBI Elder Justice Initiative." Detective Cooper briefed me. "Mr. Pemberton, we take these cases very seriously." I handed him the evidence, the bank statements, showing the unauthorized transfers, the fake evaluation, the bottle of lorazepam, and the background report Jacob had compiled. Torres studied each document carefully. When he looked up, his expression was grim. "We need to build a case," he said. "That means gathering more evidence, preferably in real time. Mr. Pemberton, would you be willing to help us collect recorded evidence?" I stared at him. "You want me to record my own daughter?" "If you're willing," Torres said evenly. "We need her to admit what she's doing. A confession on tape would be invaluable." The words hit me like a punch. I'd known this was coming, but hearing it out loud made it real. Jacob leaned forward. "What about Clara?" he asked. "She's 7 years old. She can't be dragged into this." Torres met his gaze. "We'll protect the child. Our priority is stopping the people doing harm. If Clara is safe with you, we'll make sure she stays that way." "And Brady Thornton?" I asked. Cooper spoke up. "We're already looking into him. If what you've told us is accurate, he's done this before. We'll investigate him separately. Torres pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. Here's what I'm proposing. You meet with your daughter again somewhere neutral, somewhere we can monitor. You wear a wire. You get her talking. If she admits to any part of this, the forgeries, the medications, the money we move in, I looked down at the folder. Inside were consent forms, legal disclaimers, instructions for wearing a recording device. You'd be helping us not just with your case, Torres added, but potentially with others. People like Brady Thornton prey on vulnerable individuals. If we can tie him to this, we can shut him down. Jacob looked at me. Philip, you don't have to do this. But I did. I knew I did. When can I asked? As soon as you're ready, Torres said. We'll set it up, brief you on what to say, and monitor everything in real time. You won't be alone. I nodded slowly. Then let's do it. Cooper stood and shook my hand. You're doing the right thing, Mr. Pemberton. Torres handed me a business card. Call me when you're ready to set up the meeting. We'll take it from there. Jacob and I walked out of the police station into the bright morning sunlight. My hands were shaking. You okay? Jacob asked. I wasn't sure how to answer. I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread relief that I was no longer facing this alone, that people with authority and resources were finally involved. But also dread, because I knew what came next would tear my family apart. I don't know, I said finally. But we're doing this. For Clara. For Marianne. For everyone Allison and Brady have hurt. Jacob nodded. Then we'll see it through. We climbed into his car, and as we drove back toward Greenwood Hills, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just crossed a line I could never uncross. The authorities were involved now. There was no going back. And somewhere out there, Allison had no idea what was coming. The FBI moved quickly. By the following Monday afternoon, there were 2 technicians in my study installing surveillance equipment, a camera hidden in the bookshelf microphones in the smoke detectors, and a small recording device I'd wear clipped to my belt whenever Allison came by. Its voice activated. Special Agent Torres explained, showing me the device. You won't have to do anything except talk. We'll be monitoring remotely. Jacob stood near the window, arms crossed. And if something goes wrong, we'll have a team nearby at all times, Torres assured him. Mr. Pemberton won't be in danger. I wasn't so sure about that, but I nodded anyway. Day 1, Monday evening. Allison arrived at 6:30, unannounced as usual. I heard her car in the driveway and felt the small recorder press against my ribs beneath my sweater. She let herself in with her key. Hi, Dad, she said, breezing into the living room. Her tone was light, but her eyes were calculating. I wanted to check in on you. I'm fine, I said carefully. She sat down across from me, folding her hands in her lap. Actually, I've been thinking. You're getting older. Living alone in this big house, it's not safe. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. And are you? She tilted her head as if genuinely concerned. Dad, I think it might be time to consider an assisted living facility. Somewhere with staff. People who can keep an eye on you. The words felt rehearsed. I forced myself to stay calm. Why would I need that? Because you're 70 years old, she said, leaning forward. And Dr. Thornton seems to think it would be in your best interest. There it was. Brady's name spoken aloud. I see, I said quietly. Allison smiled. Just think about it, okay? She left 10 minutes later. As soon as the door closed, Torres called. We got it, he said. She mentioned Thornton. That ties her to him directly. Day 3, Wednesday afternoon. FBI surveillance tracked Allison to a small cafe on the north side of town. Brady Thornton met her there at 2 o'clock. I wasn't present, but Torres called me afterward with the details. We couldn't get audio, he explained. But we had a lip reader analyze the footage. Your daughter told Thornton the old man won't cooperate. Thornton replied, we need to push harder. Get him committed to a psych facility. I felt sick. They're escalating, Torres continued. That's good for us. Means they're desperate. Day 5, Friday morning. Torres had instructed me to fake a medical episode, something believable, but not dangerous. Something that would prompt Allison to act. So on Friday morning I called her. Allison, I said, letting my voice waver slightly. I'm not feeling well. She arrived within 20 minutes. I was sitting in the living room when she walked in, clutching my chest theatrically. "My dad," she said sharply. "What's wrong?" "I don't know," I said. "Dizzy, my chest." She didn't hesitate. She pulled out her phone and called 911. The paramedics arrived 12 minutes later. They checked my vitals and loaded me onto a stretcher. Allison rode with me to the hospital, her face tight with what might have been concern or frustration. At the ER, the attending physician ran tests. "Mr. Pemberton," he said finally, "you're perfectly fine. All your vitals are normal." Allison's expression hardened. But he collapsed. There's no medical indication of that," the doctor said gently. Allison stared at me. For just a moment, I saw something cold flicker across her face. On the drive home, she didn't say a word. Day 7, Sunday evening. Torres called me that night. "We have enough surveillance footage," he said. "The cafe meeting the hospital incident, the recordings from your house, it all paints a clear picture. But we need one more thing." "What?" "A direct threat, or a demand. Something explicit that we can use in court. Right now, everything's circumstantial. We need her to make a move." "How do I get her to do that?" "Just invite her over," Torres said. "Tell her you're ready to discuss arrangements for your future. Make it sound like you're giving in. She'll think she's won. That's when people get careless." I took a breath. And then we move in. I sent Allison a text message that night. "Can we talk? I'm ready to discuss my future." She replied within seconds. "Friday morning, 10 a.m. We'll settle this once and for all." I stared at the screen. Friday. 5 days away. 5 days for her to plan whatever she was planning. Jacob came by late that evening. We sat in the study, neither of us saying much. "You ready for this?" he asked finally. "I have to be," I said. Jacob nodded. "Then we'll be ready too." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Allison as a child, the way she used to hold my hand, the way she'd laugh at my terrible jokes. I thought about Marianne, and how proud she'd been of our daughter. And I thought about Clara, 7 years old, who had no idea her mother had abandoned her, who had no idea that in 5 days everything would change. I knew what was coming. The wire, the confrontation, the confession. The moment when federal agents would walk through my door and arrest my own daughter. Friday would destroy my family, but it was the only way to save it. I told myself that over and over as I lay in the dark waiting for morning. Because if I didn't believe it, I wasn't sure I could go through with what came next. Thursday afternoon felt wrong from the moment Jacob called me. "Philip," he said, his voice tight with panic. "Allison took Clara." I was in my study reviewing paperwork for tomorrow's confrontation. His words didn't register at first. "What do you mean, took her?" "From school," Jacob said. "I went to pick her up at 3, and the teacher said her mother already came. Allison showed up with ID and Clara's birth certificate. Told them there was a family emergency." My blood went cold. "Where is she now?" "I don't know," Jacob said. "I'm calling Torres." "Do it," I said, "now." Special Agent Torres called me back 20 minutes later. "We're aware of the situation," he said. "Legally, Allison is Clara's biological mother. She has parental rights. Unless there's an immediate threat to the child's safety, we can't intervene. She abandoned Clara 7 years ago." I said, my voice rising. "She has no right." Mr. Pemberton, I understand your frustration, but this is a custody matter, not a criminal one. If Jacob wants to challenge this, he needs to go through family court. That could take weeks." "I know." Torres said quietly. But our hands are tied unless there's evidence of harm or danger. Right now, Allison hasn't committed a crime by picking up her own daughter. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Where would she take her? I asked. Most likely her apartment, Torres said. We're sending officers to do a welfare check right now. Jacob called me 30 minutes later. They found them, he said. Clara's at Allison's apartment. She's okay physically, at least. The police said there's no immediate danger. Did you talk to her? For 2 minutes, Jacob said, his voice breaking. The officer let me speak to her. She asked me why the nice lady said she was her mom. I didn't know what to tell her. I closed my eyes. Clara was 7 years old. She had no idea what was happening. What did Allison say? I asked. Nothing. She wouldn't come to the phone. Just told the officer that Clara was her daughter and she had every right to spend time with her. And the police, they said unless there's a court order they can't remove Clara. Allison's within her legal rights. I called Martin Hughes immediately. Martin, I need an emergency custody petition filed tonight. Howie Phillip Family Court doesn't work that way. Even an emergency hearing could take 72 hours. I don't care, I said. File it. Jacob has been Clara's sole caregiver for 7 years. Allison abandoned her. That has to count for something. It does, Martin said. But we'll need documentation proof of abandonment proof that Jacob's been the primary caregiver character witnesses. I can start the paperwork tonight, but we won't get a hearing until next week at the earliest. Next week, I felt the walls closing in. Clara could be gone by then. I'll do everything I can, Martin said. But you need to prepare Jacob for the possibility that this could get messy. Jacob came to my house that evening. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. She won't answer my calls, he said. I've tried 20 times. Allison just lets it go to voicemail. Torres said Clara's safe, I reminded him. She's not in danger. You don't know that, Jacob said, his voice raw. Allison abandoned her once. What if she does it again? What if she just disappears? I didn't have an answer for that. We sat in silence for a long time. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn. I thought about Clara, her drawing her smile the way she'd called me Grandpa Phillip that first night at the Lexington room. And I thought about Allison, my daughter. The woman who had given birth to Clara and then walked away. The woman who was now using that same child as leverage. She's going to call, I said finally. Jacob looked at me. How do you know? Because that's what this is about. She doesn't want Clara. She wants control. And she knows taking Clara is the one thing that will force us to negotiate. As if on cue, my phone rang. I looked at the screen. Allison. Jacob leaned forward. Answer it. I put the phone on speaker. Hello, Allison. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Oh, hi, Dad, she said sweetly. I thought we should talk. Where's Clara? She's fine. She's watching a movie. We had pizza for dinner. She's a sweet kid. I can see why Jacob's so attached. My jaw tightened. What do you want? I want to settle this, Allison said. All of it. Tomorrow. You, me, and the future of this family. Is that a threat? It's an invitation, she said. 10 a.m., your house. We'll discuss Clara. We'll discuss your estate. And we'll come to an agreement. And if I refuse, there was a pause. Then Allison's voice turned cold. Then I disappear with Clara. And you'll never see either of us again. The line went dead. Jacob stared at me, his face pale. She's serious, he said. I know. What do we do? I looked at the phone in my hand. Tomorrow was supposed to be the confrontation, the wire, the confession, the moment when everything came crashing down on Allison. But now she'd changed the game. Now Clara was in the middle of it. We go through with it, I said quietly. Torres will be monitoring. If Allison makes a single threat, if she admits to anything on tape, they move in, and then we get Clara back. And if it goes wrong, I didn't answer, because I didn't know. All I knew was that tomorrow, one way or another, this ended. That night, I lay awake in the dark, thinking about the last time I'd felt this helpless. It was 3 years ago, sitting beside Marianne's hospital bed, watching her slip away. I'd failed her. I hadn't been able to save her. But I wouldn't fail Clara. Tomorrow I'd face my daughter. I'd wear the wire. I'd say whatever I had to say to get her to confess. And when it was over, Clara would be safe. I had to believe that. Because if I didn't, I wasn't sure I could go through with it. Friday morning arrived cold and clear. I stood in my study at 9:30 watching Special Agent Torres attach the wire to my chest. The device was smaller than I'd expected, about the size of a quarter, with a thin microphone that ran up under my collar. "You're going to be fine," Torres said, adjusting the placement. "We'll hear everything. If at any point you feel unsafe, just say the word Marianne. That's the panic signal. We'll be inside in 30 seconds. I nodded, though my mouth was too dry to speak. Jacob stood by the window. He hadn't said much all morning. Detective Cooper was already outside in the surveillance van parked 2 blocks away with a clear line of sight to the house. "Remember," Torres said, "let her talk. Don't push too hard. If she feels cornered, she'll shut down. We need her to admit what she's planning, ideally with specifics. The transfer of assets, the fake medical evaluation, the threats, anything that ties her to Brady Thornton." "And Clara?" I asked. "We have officers monitoring Allison's apartment," Torres said. "If Clara's there, we'll know. But right now, our priority is getting this confession on tape." At 9:55, Torres and Jacob left through the back door. I heard the van door close in the distance. I was alone. Allison arrived at exactly 10 o'clock. I heard her car in the driveway, the sound of her heels on the front steps. She let herself in with her key, just like she always did. "Det," she called out, "in here." I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She walked into the living room, looking calm and composed. She was wearing a tailored blazer and carrying a leather folder. Everything about her screamed control. "Good morning," she said, sitting down across from me without waiting for an invitation. "Where's Clara?" I asked. "She's safe," Allison said smoothly. "With a friend. We can talk about her later. I want to see her." "And you will," Allison said, "after we finish our conversation. Now sit down." I sat. Allison opened the folder and pulled out several documents. "I've been very patient with you, Dad. But you're making this harder than it needs to be." "Making what harder?" "Your transition," she said, "into assisted living. It's time." "I don't need assisted living." "Dr. Thornton disagrees," Allison said. "In fact, he's prepared to testify in court that you're a danger to yourself, that you're no longer competent to manage your own affairs." "Brady Thornton isn't a real doctor," I said carefully. Allison smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "The court won't know that," she said. "All they'll see is a licensed medical professional raising concerns about an elderly man living alone, a man who's been experiencing memory lapses, confusion, paranoia, a man who needs help." "What do you want, Allison?" She leaned forward, her expression hardening. "I want you to sign power of attorney," she said. "Full and irrevocable. And I want you to transfer controlling interest in Pemberton Holdings to me. And if I refuse, then I take Clara and disappear," Allison said coldly. "Again. And this time you'll never find us. I've done it before, Dad. I can do it again." My chest tightened. The wire pressed against my ribs. "You're using your own daughter as leverage," I asked. "She's insurance," Allison said. "A guarantee that you'll cooperate." "What happened to you?" I asked quietly. "How did you become this person?" For just a moment something flickered across her face, something raw and wounded. You did this," she said. "You and Mom. Always so perfect. Always so focused on your precious company, your legacy. I was invisible." "That's not true," How isn't it? Allison's voice rose. After Mom died, you didn't look at me once. Not once. I was grieving too, Dad. But all you cared about was your own pain. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. But this isn't the way to fix it. This isn't about fixing anything, Allison said, standing up. This is about survival. Mine and Clara's. You sign the papers by Monday, or I'm gone. For good. She walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and Dad, if you try to stop me, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are. Unfit, incompetent, dangerous. Think about that. She opened the door. Allison, I said. She paused. Clara deserves better than this, I said. Better than you running. Better than being used as a pawn. Allison's face went cold. Clara will have everything I never did, she said. Money, freedom, a life that's actually hers. And what about a mother who stays? The question hung in the air between us. Allison's jaw tightened. Sign the papers, Dad. Monday, noon, or lose everything. She walked out. The door closed behind her. For a long moment, I just sat there, my heart pounding. Then Torres's voice crackled in my earpiece. We got her, he said. Every word. Philip, you did it. 4 hours after the recording, I sat in the FBI surveillance van with Jacob watching everything unfold on a bank of monitors. Special Agent Torres had insisted we stay back for safety reasons, he'd said. But I think he knew I needed to see this happen. I needed to know it was real. On the center screen, 2 FBI agents approached the glass doors of Brady Thornton's office building downtown. Torres and Detective Cooper led the team flanked by 4 uniformed officers. Jacob leaned forward, his hands clenched. They're really doing this. Yes, I said quietly. They are. The receptionist at Brady's office looked up as the agents entered. She was young, probably in her 20s, and her smile faltered the moment she saw the badges. Can I help you? She asked nervously. Torres held up his credentials. FBI. We need to speak with Dr. Brady Thornton. Do you have an appointment? I know, Torres said. But he'll want to see us. The receptionist picked up the phone, her hands shaking slightly. A moment later, Brady's voice came through the intercom. What's this about elder abuse fraud and conspiracy? Torres said loudly enough for the whole office to hear. You can come out here or we can come in there. There was a pause. Then Brady emerged from his office, his face composed, but his eyes sharp with calculation. I'm not sure what you think you have, Brady said smoothly, but I'm a licensed mental health professional. Anything between me and my clients is confidential. Cooper stepped forward. You're not licensed, Mr. Thornton. You dropped out of medical school in 2018, which means you have no doctor-patient privilege to hide behind. Brady's composure slipped for just a second. I'd like to call my lawyer. You can do that from the station, Torres said. He nodded to the officers. Brady Thornton, you're under arrest for elder abuse fraud and conspiracy to commit identity theft. The officers moved in. Brady didn't resist, but his jaw tightened as they cuffed his hands behind his back. You have the right to remain silent. Cooper began reading him his Miranda rights as they let him out. Jacob exhaled beside me. 1 down. 1 to go, I said. On the second monitor, a police cruiser pulled up outside Allison's apartment building. 2 officers got out and walked up the stairs to the 3rd floor. My heart pounded as they knocked on the door. Allison opened it, still dressed in the blazer she'd worn to my house that morning. Her expression shifted from annoyance to alarm. What's going on? She asked. Allison Pemberton, one of the officers said. Yes, you're under arrest for elder abuse, fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. This is ridiculous, Allison said, her voice rising. My father is senile? He doesn't know what he's saying. We have a recording of your conversation this morning, the officer said. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Allison's face went white. "You had him wired," she whispered. The officer didn't answer. He just turned her around and cuffed her wrists, and then I heard a small voice from inside the apartment. "Daddy." Jacob shot to his feet. "Clara." Torres nodded. "Go." Jacob was out of the van before I could say a word. I watched on the monitor as he sprinted up the stairs and into the apartment. Clara stood in the living room, her eyes wide and frightened. "Daddy!" she cried, running to him. Jacob scooped her up and held her tight, burying his face in her hair. "I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe now. Why are they taking that lady away?" Clara asked, her voice small. "It's okay." Jacob said, his voice breaking. "You're coming home with me." One of the officers spoke quietly to Jacob, confirming that Clara was unharmed and that she could leave with him immediately. Jacob nodded, still holding Clara like he'd never let go. On the monitor, Allison was being led down the stairs in handcuffs. She didn't look back. I sat in the van for a long time after the monitors went dark. Torres had stepped outside to coordinate with the officers transporting Brady and Allison to the station. The van was quiet except for the hum of the equipment. I thought about the last time I'd seen Allison without anger or fear clouding my vision. She'd been 16, laughing at something Marianne had said over dinner. Her whole face had lit up. She'd been so bright, so full of life. Where had that girl gone? Jacob climbed back into the van, Clara asleep in his arms. She looked so small, her face pressed against his shoulder. "She okay?" I asked. She's exhausted," Jacob said. "But she's okay." I reached out and gently touched Clara's hair. She stirred slightly, but didn't wake. "Thank you," Jacob said quietly. "For everything. For believing me. For fighting for her." "She's my granddaughter," I said. "I'd do anything for her." Jacob nodded. "I know." Torres came back a few minutes later. "Thornton and Allison are both in custody. They'll be arraigned on Monday. Given the evidence, I don't expect either of them to make bail." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we build the case," Torres said. "Testimonies, financials, the recording. It'll take a few months, but we'll get convictions." And Clara. "Yeah, Jacob has full physical custody," Torres said. "Allison's parental rights will likely be terminated given the circumstances. But that's up to the family court judge." I looked at Clara, still asleep in Jacob's arms. She had no idea how close she'd come to disappearing forever. No idea that her mother had used her as a bargaining chip. But she was safe now. That was what mattered. That evening back at my house, I stood in the study and looked at the photo of Marianne on my desk. She was smiling, her hand resting on my shoulder. It had been taken at our 40th anniversary just a few months before she got sick. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening to Allison. I'm sorry I failed her." But even as I said it, I knew the truth. I hadn't failed Allison. She'd made her choices. And I'd made mine. I'd chosen Clara. I'd chosen the truth. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. A week after the arrests, the house felt different, quieter, emptier. I spent hours going through old photo albums, studying pictures of Allison as a child, trying to understand where I had lost her. The doorbell rang at 10 in the morning. When I opened the door, Jacob stood there with Clara beside him. "I hope this is okay," Jacob said. "Clara wanted to see you." I looked down at the little girl in a yellow dress clutching a stuffed rabbit. Her dark hair was pulled into a ponytail, and her eyes, Marianne's eyes, looked up at me with cautious curiosity. "Grandpa Philip," she asked. The word broke something open inside me. I knelt down, my vision blurring. "Yes, sweetheart," I said. "That's me." Clara stepped forward and wrapped her arms around my neck. I held her, feeling 7 lost years collapse into that single embrace. "Why are you crying?" she asked. "Because I'm happy," I said softly. "Because I finally get to meet you." Jacob cleared his throat. "Can we come in?" "Of course." We sat in the living room, where I'd confronted Allison days earlier. Now Clara sat beside me, swinging her legs and staring around. "This house is really big," she said. "It is," I replied. "It used to feel full." You should get a dog, she said seriously. Jacob smiled. That's her answer to everything. I laughed for the first time in weeks. Maybe I will. Clara studied me. Daddy says you're my real grandpa. That's true. And Allison, she's my mom. Yes, she was quiet. Why did she leave me? I glanced at Jacob. He nodded. Sometimes grown-ups make big mistakes, I said carefully. Your mom wasn't ready to be a mother. So your dad raised you. That's not a mistake, Clara said. That's mean. You're right, I said. And I'm sorry. Is she coming back? Not for a long time. She thought for a moment. Can I still call you Grandpa? I'd like that very much. She smiled, and it felt like seeing Marianne again. After Clara went outside with Jacob to explore the garden, my phone rang. Special Agent Torres. The trial date's set, he said. November 15th. That's soon. The evidence is strong. Allison's charged with elder abuse, financial exploitation, and conspiracy. Brady Thornton is charged with fraud and practicing medicine without a license. Allison could face 5 to 10 years. I closed my eyes. And Clara, I asked. Jacob filed to terminate Allison's parental rights. The judge will likely approve it. Jacob will have full custody. That's good, I said. Are you okay, Torres asked. I wasn't sure how to answer. My daughter was in jail, my wife was gone, my family was fractured. But Clara was safe. I will be, I said. That evening, after Jacob and Clara left, I sat at my desk and took out a piece of stationery. I'd been thinking about this all week. I began to write. Dear Allison, I don't know if you'll read this, but I need to say what I should have said long ago. I failed you. After your mother died, I was lost in my own grief and didn't see yours. I didn't see how alone you felt. For that, I am truly sorry. But what you did to me, to Jacob, to Clara was your choice. And now you must live with it. Clara is safe. She is loved. I will make sure she never feels invisible. I hope someday you understand what you threw away, but I will not let Clara suffer for your mistakes. Dad, I sealed the envelope and addressed it to the correctional facility where Allison was being held. I didn't know if she would respond, but I had said what I needed to say. That night, I stood in the guest room overlooking the garden. Jacob had mentioned Clara loved yellow, so I'd already ordered paint and curtains. She would live with Jacob, but she would have a room here too, a place where she belonged. I looked out at the darkening sky and thought of Marianne, of how much she would have loved Clara. I'll do better this time, I whispered, and I meant it. The courtroom was packed on November 15th. I sat in the gallery beside Jacob, my hands folded in my lap, watching as they led Allison in. She wore a navy blazer and kept her eyes fixed on the floor. She didn't look at me once. Brady Thornton sat at the defense table beside his attorney, his expression carefully neutral. But I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers drummed against the wood. The prosecutor presented the evidence methodically, the recordings, the bank statements, Brady's fraudulent credentials, the fake psychiatric evaluation. Each piece built on the last, constructing an undeniable picture of conspiracy and abuse. Allison's attorney tried to argue that she'd been acting out of misguided concern for my well-being, that she'd only wanted to protect me. The judge wasn't convinced. Brady took the stand and threw Allison under the bus without hesitation. She paid me to falsify the evaluation, he said. She told me exactly what to write. Allison's face crumpled, but she didn't speak. When the verdict came, it was swift. Guilty on all counts. Both of them. The judge handed down the sentences: 7 years for Allison, 10 for Brady. Allison collapsed into her chair, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I watched her, my daughter, my only child, and felt something break inside me that I knew would never fully heal. December 2024, I drove to the Washington State Correctional Facility on a cold Tuesday morning, a month after the trial. The building was gray and institutional, surrounded by high fences and razor wire. I went through security, surrendered my belongings, and was led to a visitation room divided by thick plexiglass panels. I sat down and waited. When Allison walked in, I barely recognized her. She'd lost weight. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and she wore the standard orange jumpsuit. She sat down across from me and picked up the phone. I did the same. "Hi, Dad," she said quietly. "Hi." We sat in silence for a moment. "I got your letter," she said finally. "Did you read it?" "Yes." And Allison's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to tell me if you meant it," I said. "Your apology. Was it real?" She looked down. "I don't know. I wanted to hurt you. For a long time I wanted that. Why? Because you hurt me first," she said, her voice breaking. "When Mom died, you forgot I existed. You were so wrapped up in your own grief that you didn't see mine." "I know," I said. "And I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't change anything." "Maybe not," I said. "But I want to try." Allison looked up. "Try what?" "To be your father again, if you'll let me." She stared at me for a long moment, searching my face for something, sincerity maybe, or proof that I meant it. "What about Clara?" she asked. "She's safe. Jacob's a good father. Does she hate me?" "No," I said. "She's confused, but she doesn't hate you." Allison's tears spilled over. "Will you bring her to see me?" "When she's ready," I said. "And when you're ready." Allison nodded slowly. "I'll come back next month," I said. "If you want me to." "Okay," she whispered. Early 2025. I visited Allison every month. At first, our conversations were stilted, filled with long silences and unspoken hurt. But slowly, painfully slowly, we began to find our way back to each other. In March, Jacob brought Clara to visit. She drew a picture for Allison, a family holding hands under a bright yellow sun. Allison cried when she saw it and taped it to the wall of her cell. I wrote to Allison every week. Sometimes she wrote back, sometimes she didn't. But I kept writing anyway. She started attending therapy sessions offered by the prison. She told me it was helping, that she was beginning to understand why she'd made the choices she had. I set up a trust fund for Clara's education. Jacob and I became close friends, something I never would have predicted that rainy night at the Lexington room. Clara started calling me Grandpa Phil. It made me smile every time. Thanksgiving 2025. Jacob, Clara, and I sat around the dining room table at my house. I'd cooked a turkey badly, but Clara insisted it was delicious. We held hands and said grace, and for the first time in years, I felt something like wholeness. I raised my glass. "To second chances," I said. "To the family we're born into and the family we choose." "What a family," Jacob echoed. Clara grinned. "Can we eat now?" We laughed, and for a moment everything felt right. Epilogue. I don't know if Allison and I will ever have the relationship I once hoped for. I don't know if she'll truly forgive me, or if I'll fully forgive her. But I know this, I won't give up on her. Not again. 7 years is a long time. But it's also an opportunity, a chance for her to heal, and for me to become the father I should have been all along. When she comes home, Clara will be waiting, so will I. Because that's what family does. We wait. We hope. And we try again. On my 70th birthday, I stood alone in the rain, wondering if my life had meant anything. Today, at 71, I sit at the dinner table with my granddaughter and her father, and I have my answer. Meaning doesn't lie in perfection. It lies in persistence, in love that refuses to quit even when things get hard. Especially when they get hard. My daughter made terrible choices, so did I. But we're still here, still trying. And I've learned that sometimes that's enough. And to you listening to this story, remember this. Sometimes the greatest battles we face aren't against others. They're against our own pride, our own blindness, and our own refusal to see what's right in front of us. I stood in the rain on my 70th birthday, broken and alone, believing I'd lost everything. But God had other plans. He sent me Jacob and Clara that night, not by accident, but by design. And through them, He showed me that redemption is always possible, even when we think we've gone too far. This isn't just a family story about betrayal and justice. It's a family story about second chances. It's a family story about choosing love over bitterness even when bitterness feels justified. Because at the end of the day, what good is a dad revenge if it leaves you empty inside? What good is winning if you've lost your soul in the process? I thought my dad revenge would bring me peace, that seeing Allison arrested would somehow heal the wound she'd opened. But standing in that courtroom, watching my daughter sentenced to 7 years in prison, I realized something revenge doesn't heal. Only forgiveness does. And forgiveness isn't something you do once, it's something you choose every single day until it becomes part of who you are. Don't be like I was. Don't let grief turn you into someone who can't see the people who need you most. Don't let anger steal the years you could spend building something beautiful. Because life is short, and the people we love, even when they hurt us, are worth fighting for. God gave me Clara when I thought I had nothing left to live for. He gave me a chance to be the grandfather I never got to be, and the father I should have been all along. And for that, I am eternally grateful. If you're listening to this and thinking about your own family story, ask yourself, is there someone you've given up on? Someone you've written off as too broken, too far gone, too difficult to love? Because I promise you they're not. None of us are. We're all just people trying to find our way home. And sometimes home is the place we have to build from scratch. One conversation, one visit, one act of grace at a time. So here's my advice: don't wait. Don't assume you have time. Don't let pride or pain keep you from the people you love. Because one day, you'll stand in the rain like I did, and you'll realize that all the money, all the success, all the dad revenge in the world means nothing if you're standing there alone. If this story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you experienced a family story like this? Or have you ever had to choose between revenge and redemption? Share your story, because you never know who might need to hear it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Because these family stories matter. They remind us that we're not alone in our struggles, that healing is possible, and that love, real, stubborn, never giving up love, is always worth it. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. It means more than you know. Before you go, I want to offer a gentle reminder. The stories shared on this channel include fictional elements thoughtfully crafted for educational and inspirational purposes. So if this type of content doesn't resonate with you, feel free to explore other videos that better suit your preferences. But if you're ready to hear more stories about faith, family, and the power of second chances, then stay tuned, because there's so much more to come. God bless you, and remember, it's never too late to start again.